Hey, flower friends! I am so excited for today's live. We have a really fun show planned for you with one of our absolute flower besties, Amy Balsters, the floral coach. If you haven't met Amy yet, you're in for such a treat. She's not only incredibly talented, but she is just has this amazing way of breaking down color theory that just makes everything click. And there's my phone ringing because I totally forgot to turn off the ringer. Yay, lives. Um, and okay, so everything clicked. That's where I left off. And speaking of color, we're going to be chatting about this year's Pantone Color of the Year, Mocha Mousse. And Amy is going to show us some genius ways to work into your Valentine's Day designs. You might see some flowers behind her when I bring her on. I know you're all looking to give our customers something fresh and exciting this Valentine's Day season, and Amy's got some fantastic tips that will help you do exactly that. So make sure to post your questions in the comments. We love making these sessions interactive, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. And also, don't forget to follow us and subscribe to our blog because, that's where all the good stuff goes. Let me post that into the chat for you all, and that way you can subscribe after you're done watching us live. And now I'm going to bring on Amy. Welcome back, Amy.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me back on Mornings with Mayesh.
I know. I love having you on. Everyone loves watching you here live, and just so appreciate you coming on and talking about color. I know it's one of your favorite topics.
It's
Valentine's Day and getting ready for this big holiday. But before we get started, I think by now most of everyone that's watching knows who you are, but just in case they don't, can you just give us a quick version of your flower story?
Yes, and this is not my first rodeo with Mornings with Mayesh.
No, it is
Thank
not.
you, and I always go over on time, so I have prepared notes for myself. So I'm really
I love
growing
it.
my 2025 growth year of learning how to follow my notes correctly. So I will be kind of checking in on my notes as we chat to keep myself on task here. My name is Amy Balsters. I never assume that anybody actually knows who I am. So hello, it's nice to meet you if you're joining this morning. I have been a florist for a long time. I got into flowers in 2001. I'm from Southern California, and so I was fortunate, very fortunate to have access to a really great program in Southern California through the Golden West College 2-year certification program. So I in 2001 went through this program, got my 2-year certificate in floral design and shop management, really learned the foundations of good floristry, and started working, really just a few months into my schooling, working in retail flower shops, from bucket shops to high-end shops all over the SoCal area, but really eventually found my love and passion in the high-end wedding and event industry. I loved the adrenaline of it. It was like a really exciting thing to be a part of. Obviously, there's a lot of wealth in Southern California, and so the events that I was exposed to and the kinds of work that I got to do was just filled my cup. And so I spent many years working as professional freelancer all over Southern California and beyond. I made some really amazing connections early on. And as many of you know, that freelance, once somebody likes what you do, you stay booked and busy. And so I ended up just getting really a lot of really cool jobs and interesting work for many years doing that. Eventually relocated and moved to the Southwest, and I started my own business called Amy Nicole Floral. And I mostly did weddings and events for several years. Moved back to Los Angeles after marrying a military guy in a Southwest. We actually moved back to LA. He got stationed in LA. So I was back in the floral industry in another big city, this time focusing more on floral styling, brand activations, doing some weddings, but mostly just really taking some very specific type of jobs. And that was kind of a whole new, part of my career. And then in 2017, I started teaching. And I started traveling all over the country, different wholesalers, anyone who would host me, just trying to learn what florists really needed in their daily work with flowers, whether they worked in retail or weddings. I was trying to identify what are the real pain points and what could I offer to help people, because teaching is such a passion of mine. And I started picking up lots of information as I moved around the country and talked to florists and just taught and learned as I taught that there were some really key things that designers struggled with. And so I came home from that experience, started teaching closer to home, but started developing content courses and doing some consulting for floral businesses around those key areas. And then I launched a signature online course about 3 years ago called Bouquet Bootcamp. It's served several thousand designers at this point, and has just had this huge impact, which has been amazing. And then I just launched my brand new course, Color Theory Confidence, which is why we're going to talk about color today. So that course is really, we're going to talk about why color matters and why it should matter to every designer and how it matters to our pocketbook, not just making pretty designs. So now I teach mostly just here at my home base. I do a few events a year, teach a couple of speaking jobs here and there, but we homeschool my 10, almost 11-year-old. And so I've been kind of deep in mom zone for a while and working on his education and getting him kind of squared away in early preteen years. So it's shifted my focus a little bit, but I'm still creating content and trying to help floral designers do their best work. So that's how I got my go.
I love it. I just wanted to point out for everyone that is listening, or even if you're watching the replay or listening to the podcast, make sure you stay till the end because Amy has a special surprise for you guys that may or may not relate to her color theory confidence class.
Stick around.
Yes. Okay, so my first question for you, Amy, is, I think we would all love to hear how you first discovered your passion for color theory and how it shaped your approach to floral design over the years.
Yeah. So as a trained designer, I had this classical education. We are taught really the basics in floral design school, and I was at the same time, I was an art student. But I really was very scared of trying different things. I learned about analogous, neighboring colors on the color wheel. I learned about warm and cool, but I really just stuck within those two wheelhouses. All of my arrangements were either warm, red, orange, and yellow, or they were cool, blue, green, and purple. And I just really struggled. How do you blend these two temperatures of color? I also was very scared of high saturation. Things that had really bright tones to them scared me. I didn't really know how to not make that look sort of gaudy, and I just avoided high saturation flowers. They just made me really uncomfortable to work with. I also really struggled with blending white into color. If a bride wanted burgundy and white, I just panicked. It was like, oh, how am I not going to make this look so high contrast? And so there was a lot of fear for many years as a designer. Even though I had a foundation, I was really scared to try anything new. And I think this came from a lack of truly just education. I started this passion for color theory by truly just through social media. Seeing what other designers would do, it just opened my eyes of how are they good at that. And I think we have a very good mutual friend, Susan McCleary, Passion Flower Sue. She uses this word all the time about curiosity. And I think that's what started this was why are some designers better than others at color? How do they do it? I want to be good at this. How do I achieve that? What are the steps? What are they thinking? And here's the real caveat. And for some of you that may be live here, we often hear things like, you just got to follow your gut. You just got to go with your gut. It's intuition. Well, this is the problem with that phrase. That works for some really uber small percentage of talented people. But for the rest of us, lowly color strugglers, if it's only intuition that makes us good at color, we are in trouble, right? How do we grow? And so I was unsatisfied with that answer. I just thought, I'm going to workshops, I'm asking these really skilled designers, how do you do your color? How do you choose? I just kind of feel my way through it. And I'm like, I'm so happy for them that they're so good at that, but it doesn't really help me have any tangible steps to get better with color. And so I knew I needed concrete theory. I needed some understanding of how do I actually solve real color problems when I feel stuck. When I started to do research and really dive deep, where are these answers? I found that most floral design resources were all the same I'd learned 20 years ago. Nothing had really evolved. There wasn't a lot of aha moments. It was a lot of the same color wheel, the same explanation of very basic things. And I thought, we deserve more than this. There has to be more explanation. So as an art student in college, I knew a little bit of where to go to find color theory resources, but they were all for two-dimensional work, painters, graphic designers. They weren't for anybody who's working with a living material. That was not something I could really find. And so I started to really try to blend what I could learn in books and blogs and resources and other designers' sort of intuition, and started blending that with theory. And I started taking what I call sort of these small steps of courage in color. Instead of just sticking with the same thing I always did, I moved the needle just a little bit. And I found that that little step of courage in color helped me to feel confident about doing another little baby step next time. Whether it was incorporating white, whether it was adding something really high saturating, learning how to bridge better with more muted tones. And so taking these little baby steps nudged me just enough to just keep going and feeling like I can do this. I can be one of those designers who feels good at color, because it doesn't just come from intuition. I'm often solving color problems through reasoning. I'm looking at what's not working. Is there a proportion issue? I need brightness here. I need to tone this down. So I don't just follow my gut. I think that works a lot of times, but if your gut is off, you're having a rough day, we need some concrete things to help us solve those design problems. So eventually I really developed a process that I could hand to a designer, tangible steps that they could use to push themselves out of this sort of color comfort zone that I call it. So, color is critical. It's the first element of design that people see. It's something they order by intuitively. I hate yellow. I love purple. I want more red. I want more pink. And it evokes really strong emotion. We love, we hate, we want, we need, right? So we have to be good at color, I believe, to really be a successful designer. The better you are at color, the more successful I think in many ways you can be. And we won't talk about the business side. Obviously, I acknowledge that you need some really solid business practices in floristry, or you will just go broke really fast. But I'm talking about the design side. You can stand out in a highly competitive market if your color is really on point. And I think we see that over and over on Instagram. People just blow up when you can see they have a really unique perspective on color. And so this is important. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it, because it kind of gets passed off as, oh, yeah. I'm really good at color, or I don't need help with that. Or yeah, I just kind of do what works for me. But for the majority of us, that isn't necessarily the way that it goes down. So I'm excited to get into it.
Well, I feel like the other part too for some floral designers is that they just kind of stick with what they're comfortable with, or
Totally.
what they think customers might like.
Yeah.
And I think then things could get boring. You
Totally.
want to be exciting and fresh, and if there is a new trendy color, like figuring out how to work that in and get people excited again.
Yeah.
So color is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us to, the color of the year, Mocha Mousse.
Yes.
And yeah, like some brown color flowers. And, again, can you talk about like how can we incorporate that into, for example, Mother's Day designs where it doesn't feel too dark and heavy? It's a little non-traditional, right? Like no one, I highly doubt many people get calls and be like, I want to have brown flowers for Valentine's Day. But if we can like make it exciting and cool, and people, I do know just from like my friends who don't know flowers, right? Like in my neighborhood mom friends, if they see something that like, even if it's like a carnation, but it's in like a really cool color that they've never seen before, they get like really excited. And so I just think keeping that in mind, and when we're having this conversation will be good. And I'd love to hear from you guys too, as you're listening. Do you even think this is a possibility while Amy's going through? Like, would your Valentine's Day customers want to see something like this? And so let's talk about Mocha Mousse and Valentine's Day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to see the comment section blow up on this, because really my first key tip in this is to know thy audience, right? Not all these tips are going to work in every market. Your market's going to vary heavily from somebody in the Midwest, from Los Angeles to New York, right? Where customers, Valentine's Day is a slightly more traditional holiday, because most of the time men are ordering flowers, and a lot of men are scared to buy flowers. They feel unsure of themselves. They lack confidence. They don't do it that often. And so if they're going to buy flowers, they want to know, to have the assurance that they nailed it, and they want to make sure that their money was well spent and that it's going to be received well, right? That's an important value in the Valentine's Day sort of sales psychology. And so when we are preparing a menu of what we're going to sell, I think we have to keep that in mind, that our primary customer is typically men needing that assurance and confidence that this is going to be a success. So in terms of how we do color then among the Valentine's holiday is that my recommendation is to be a little bit more traditional in shape and form. Now, if you're a really funky florist and you do very cool, interesting, open form, asymmetrical work, heck yeah, keep going. People expect that from you. They don't want a dozen red roses from you with baby's breath. You would confuse your customer. But if all you make is typically slightly more traditional work, you're in a slightly more traditional market, and you try to get really funky for Valentine's, this is a recipe for disaster of you're just not going to sell these. So really understanding what are your customers buying, what are they wanting, and how do you do that? How do you know what your customers want? How do you achieve this? This is all through that pre-marketing sequence, right? Like warming up your audience, getting them excited about what's coming. This is, and you and I both know as marketing people now, we have, you have to sell early. It's not about that day of, it's all about those pre-orders, getting an email list, incentivizing your customer. You can learn a lot in those early weeks of what people are clicking on and wanting. There's even a deeper dive of, these maps of figuring out where are people clicking and what is their feedback. And so asking your root customers, if you don't have that yet, it's never too late. Start an email list, start marketing on social media, start marketing in Facebook in your local area, and asking people what they want. So in terms of shapes and forms, keep it slightly more traditional if you're not known for real funky things, and just bring in a little bit of this color. You can bring it in a container. I think that's a really successful way to do Mocha Mousse. A lot of customers can see this color and think that the flower is dead because most flowers turn brown when they die. And so I don't expect a customer to necessarily understand that a brown lisianthus is like, $7 a stem. And we're like drooling as designers, and they're like, why is there a dead flower in here? So knowing thy audience, lots of explanation, explaining what Mocha Mousse is. Hey, enjoy this awesome trend. I actually saw this this morning doing a little prep for our call. I want to read this to you real quick. This is a florist I found named Central Market Flowers in PA. They wrote this description about their Valentine's offering. They said, Pantone's Mocha Mousse is reimagined florals with warming mocha and toffee tones, accented with lush raspberry hues, sweet peaches, and playful pops of pink, comforting and rich like your favorite chocolate or coffee treat. This theme is perfect for a romantic gesture, bringing trendy elegance into your home or office, or celebrating life's everyday moments with sweetness and style. Shout out to Central Market Flowers for this.
I want that.
It's phenomenal. And I'll tell you, when I typed in Mocha Mousse into the old Googles, this is one of the first things it generated. So they're doing a phenomenal job on their SEO. But also, they did a perfect job of painting a picture. They're not saying, hey, you have to have this. They're saying, what's hot, cool, and trendy is coffee colored flowers. And maybe you pair this, like maybe you do this a partnership with a coffee shop. Maybe you partner with like a hot chocolate treat. There's ways to bring in sort of those food parallels of, we know that Mocha Mousse, the name of it is literally mousse, play off of chocolate, sumptuous, luxury, velvety detail, right? We have to sort of paint that picture. Otherwise, it's like, oh, did you give me your leftover dying dead brown flowers and try to pass these off as cool, right? So Mocha Mousse is all about a marketing play. I think we have to sort of communicate that with customers and teach them and show them just how interesting this is, because not every market is going to be excited about this, and we don't have to force it down their throat. We can talk about it, and if they're excited about it, we just respond to that. So those are some tips and things on what I would do early on in the process.
Great.
Yeah.
I got a couple of comments on Instagram I just wanted to read. Seven Bloom says, I think the biggest thing is presenting in a new way when they see it with other stuff that they'll get excited about. And then Rick, the flower guy, says, in my market, folks are excited about mixed floral options for Valentine's, which is a great opportunity to have pops of mocha tucked into those traditional color palettes. So love
Yeah,
the
and
comments, guys.
I'd love to show some bouquets real quick here of things that you guys sent me, because I had the joy of getting to play a little bit with the flowers that you guys sent me. But Mocha Mousse is really, it's like my coffee, right? It's a coffee with a lot of creamer. So
Right.
we don't necessarily have a light tan flower, but we can incorporate these kinds of orangey brown tones in with other colors. So I made a nice little more classic style design. This could be a hand tie wrap. This could easily drop into a vase. Very quick. This came together in about 6 or 7 minutes. So very easy production. This is also why we want slightly simpler designs and recipes, because we have to make a lot of them. We need to make them very quickly. But you can see I just grouped and did a lot of grouping and clustering. So lots of grouping and clustering helps make more of an impact. This really beautiful upright amaranthus also adds a darker version of this color, which creates that repetition, continuity. So I think that pink is a really successful way to use this, even in a tiny little mini. This is a tiny little mini wrap. This could be wrapped in brown paper, tied with a really beautiful mocha colored ribbon. And it's all one-sided. So all the money and all the product is facing forward. This could also get slipped into a little bud vase, but you don't need a lot of it. You just, we want to pay attention to proportion. This
That's
is kind of
beautiful.
kind of a medium style version of that as well. Focusing on a little bit lighter colors. I've got some lighter colored spray roses in here, just a few of the palm ranunculus. But again, proportion is important. I think having the pink be the star is important, and then letting the mocha, letting the other tones be more of a supporter. This is just like a cool, funky, weedy one I made. I was thinking about a friend in Houston. Who has a funky style, right? This could be very cool with dyed lisianthus and some Queen Anne's lace, of a way that is all still fresh, and it could be a pretty wrap. It could be, stuck into a vessel. But this is definitely for the client who wants something a little bit less traditional. So there are ways to incorporate this very easily, even if it's just like a little touch of it. It actually really matches my my art back here too, so it might stay there after I tidy up.
I love it. Someone, Holiday Hill Couture Events and Decor says, Queen Anne lace, is this friend me?
Yes, you should come get it.
And they say, I love that botanical and free bouquets. I love it too. Good stuff.
Good.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing. It's beautiful. Okay, so for florists who might be hesitant to kind of step away and try something new, step away from traditional Valentine's Day red and pink, what would you say about taking the risk with a trendier color palette this year?
Yeah. So start really, really small with trends. Again, I wouldn't go all in on this unless you have a really healthy understanding of your client base. You have a really strong understanding of your brand. What do clients expect of you? What does your Instagram flowers look like? If you're always pushing trends and people love it, go for it. If you're not, proceed with caution and go just a little tiny baby step into the trend and see how it does. Some markets are always going to want red and pink and white. They're just consistent that way. But we're seeing more and more customers over the years move away from a traditional red rose vase. In fact, a lot of florists that I've seen reporting are saying that, they had dozen red roses left over and all of their mixed bouquets went first. So I'm curious to hear from the audience as well. Did this happen in your case? Are you a more traditional florist? Are you just selling dozen reds, all day long? Or are people moving away from that and wanting something a little bit less traditional? I think, again, this is about analyzing your data for your business, because it's going to vary heavily. If you're starting out and you don't know, look to your competitors. What are they doing? Do that market research. What is selling at the grocery store, and how can you take it just a little step further? Can you do slightly different colored paper? Can you offer delivery incentives early on? Bring in this trend in a small way. I can guarantee most grocery stores, they're not talking about trends. They're not talking about Mocha Mousse, right? They're mass market. So establish yourself as the expert in what's cool, what's happening, what's new. Very similar to what this Central Market Flowers said. That shows an intelligence and a excitement and an understanding about trends that customers will get excited about. But again, know thy customer. Remember also that we're in the service industry. And I think when we talk about trends, it's easy to think to ourselves, well, I don't like that. And I don't like that. And I like that. But our floral business isn't really about what we like. It's about what our customers will buy. And so it's critical that we have an understanding of that we're asking questions, that we're staying curious, that we're trying new things. But use it as an accent, not necessarily as a main character. And so, again, I think using a Mocha Mousse vase is a really beautiful way. A couple years ago, I think, well, actually, it was last year, I did a catalog shoot for Accent Decor. You think you can go back and still see some of their stuff on Accent Decor's website. And I used a lot of this like brown, like a mocha colored vessel because it works perfectly blending pinks, reds, I mean, literally brown. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but it works with every color. I mean, Mocha Mousse is a dream for florists from a vase perspective because every color works. And so if you're struggling to start or you don't want to bring in brown flowers, try a vessel and you'll be amazed at how gorgeous it looks with every type of red, every type of pink. It's pretty phenomenal.
I love it. I love it. I have someone that said they are team mixed bouquets for Valentine's Day. And someone else says, I find customers enjoy something different and more unique for their customer base too, which is, I think, really exciting for our industry. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Especially if you're a Mayesh customer, because Mayesh does bring in some of the coolest novelty product, the most interesting things. I know David Dawson personally, who's out traveling the world constantly, visiting small and large farms, literally sourcing. He has a fascinating role in Mayesh, and seeing, when we did our design tour together, getting to talk to him more and see him more and hear about how he was bringing new products to market is fascinating. And so I know the commitment Mayesh has in finding those new and interesting things that don't exist other places and bringing them to your customers, which is one of the many things I love about Mayesh. So I love seeing what you guys have every year. It's something new.
And we did ask Amy to say that on our behalf, just
yes,
so you know.
on, just like you can Venmo me right after the call.
Yes. I love it. I love it. So I am curious about, I think you've touched on this a little bit already, but just talking about your creative process when you're working with a new color like Mocha Mousse. Do you start with the focal flower and build around it, or do you begin with an overall color story? Like, how do you start thinking about that?
Yeah, I love that you asked this question because this is exactly what I was talking about. Is there a process? I don't know if I should have worked in a different field, but it's like, I want a process. And my brain loves a process. I would like to know the steps. How do I achieve this? And I'm learning to kind of be more flexible and let go more in my own way. But this is really where I think I have really thrived as a teacher, because I want to give people a process that works. I want something that's proven. And so to answer this is actually a really long question. So I know we're on a limited amount of time, and I'm going to try to keep this concise. But there are three main ways that I build a color palette. So I either start with what I call a core hue, meaning if we're looking at Mocha Mousse, I'm identifying in Mocha Mousse what is the most dominant color contained, or the dominant hue contained in this color that I'm looking at. And that has to be done visually. There's no machine, there's no scientific process that we can look at and say, well, there is this much. I mean, you could do that through, different apps and things, but this is just a quick thing. I'm standing in the market, I'm looking at a flower. What is it that I'm actually looking at? And so I try to identify what is the majority color here. That question helps me identify where on the color wheel or where on a color spectrum do I want to go? How do I want to harmonize this color? How am I going to build something that is very blended with this color, or do I want more contrast? So once I know a core hue, I ask myself the second set of questions. Do I want more blended? Do I want more contrast? Then I start to look at, how do I actually create that? So is this going to be blended through tints, tones, and shades of this color, meaning different variations of that have more white, more black? Or am I going to choose something more high contrast? So let me give you some examples, because I know I'm throwing out all this color jargon. So if I have a pink, which is a great example, right? And we'll talk about mocha in a minute. But if I have pink, the core hue of this is actually red, because pink is not a hue. pink is a tint of red, right? So pink is essentially red and white mixed together. Now, there's a lot of violet in here as well. This is the complexity with dealing with color and flowers, is that there are thousands of little interesting flecks of color in this. So how do we actually look at this and figure out what am I actually looking at? So I really try to take it down to this very core question. Well, the majority of this ranunculus is pink. Well, pink is a tint of red. So I have a warm color. I have a warm temperature. This is a warm pink, right? It has violet undertones, so it's got a little bit of purple in it. So it's sort of a red, it's a violet pink, right? So then I know, okay, I'm kind of in this area right here. This is my home, right? And so when I look at a color wheel, I'm trying to figure out if this is a reddish, pinkish violet, do I want to extend that and create and add more red, pink, and violet to it? That's a very safe way to build a color story. Just add more red, pink, and violet. Now, if I want to create contrast, I'm going to go the opposite of that color, which is green, and I'm going to bring in some green tones and create more vibrancy and tension. Now, what do we do with Mocha Mousse? Because if you look at my little color swatch here, every one of these color swatches has a version, most of them have some type of version of brown. They all contain, if you muddy them enough, they contain some type of brown, especially as you start blending them together. So if you think about when we were, coloring as kids with crayons and you start to mix and mash all these colors together, you end up with brown, right? You don't necessarily end up with more pink or more red. So Mocha Mousse has a warm tint to it. It's definitely it has a red undertone. There's a little bit more of that warmth. That tells me that when I want to build on Mocha Mousse, if I want to stick to reds, oranges, and yellows, I'm going to have success with that consistently. Now, if I want to go the opposite and create more tension, I'm going to use more cool colors. So blues, purples, or lavenders, purples, violets, etc., and greens. Now, they still work beautifully, but here's the caveat when it comes to temperature. When you're working with varying temperatures, if you have warm colors and cool colors, you want to have one of them always win out visually. So this is where the 80-20 temperature rule comes in. So having 80% of one temperature and 20% of another gets you the most success. Now, this is just a generic rule. You can't sit there and necessarily pick this apart too much. But this is really where proportion comes in. And this is where I'm just going to say this super high level. Color is so complex and it's such a big topic. It took me about 1 year and 3 months to build this color course. And we actually went through many iterations of tearing it apart and redoing it because it just wasn't clear enough. And I wanted it clearer and clearer and clearer. So we spent so long doing this. So I'm giving you a super compacted answer.
Yes.
But the number one thing to consider when you're building a color story is to think about proportion. How much of each color should be contained in this design? And the most simplest answer is to reflect nature's mathematics. And this is through the golden ratio. So I have this very simple ratio of 10, 30, 60. This is not my own. This is a reflection of Fibonacci and all that already exists around us in nature. So do this. When you have a palette and you have 3, 4, 5 colors, it doesn't matter. 10% should be one color, 30% should be another, and 60% should be another. If you have more than 3, the ratio just stretches out a little bit, but practice it with 3 colors. Move things around. If something's really big in size, you're looking at the whole volume of what that color takes up in a palette. And so without diving I've already dipped my toe in the weeds here, but this 10, 30, 60 can radically change your work. If you understand just simply proportion and can proportion your colors to mimic this asymmetry, your designs automatically become more successful. And I've watched it over and over, all over the Mayesh design tour we did. How many locations? Several hundred students around the country. And they went through this process of learning how to pull proportion. And I could literally watch around the room visually all of these designs, even if the colors, palette was a little off, a little funky, it was more successful just simply because of their proportions. And so if that's one takeaway you take from this discussion, play with that, learn about it, really explore that, and it will really change the way you build your palettes.
Golden ratio. Are you guys using that now? I would like to know.
Yes. To know.
Very, very cool. Yes, so much to go into color theory. That's
Yeah, it's a
amazing.
long class.
Yeah, I did get a question, and they were asking, do you typically have a different cost for non-traditional? So for something that's like different than the normal. And I don't know how to answer that. It probably depends on who you ask, but what would you say, Amy?
Non-traditional, like, do I charge more for non-traditional flowers?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a great answer to that. My answer to that is about perceived value, right? I think that's
Mm.
an important phrase in floristry because just like a cake, if you go buy a cake, you're not buying how much the eggs cost and the flour cost and the sugar. You're buying how beautiful it looks in the perceived idea of how it's going to taste behind the glass that you were pressing our nose against to want to eat it, right? So flowers are the same. We're not necessarily charging because this amaranthus costs this, they're going to necessarily get that. That is the best way to run a business is to understand your cost and mark up correctly. I'm not doubting that. But there are some markets where the exact same design costs, 40% more than somewhere else because of perceived value, because that market can bear something different. So there is no simple answer in floristry when it comes to pricing. Our number one rule of thumb to stay profitable is to know your cost. You have to know what it costs you to actually make that arrangement. What's your overhead? What's your labor? What's your cost of goods? What did it cost to get it into your shop? So breaking down your cost and understanding your true cost, then you can play with the profit margin. You can play with what's the perceived value in my market? How good is my branding? How good is my marketing? There are florists that charge a lot more than other florists and get it simply because they have amazing brand recognition. So this not a one for one in our industry, and I don't think it should be. I think people are rewarded for good branding and marketing that understand that the market rewards good marketing. It's just the way it works.
Yeah. I also, when we're talking about color theory, has it been a couple years already? We worked together on a cafe latte guide
Right.
that I feel like would be kind of super helpful to this conversation. Yeah?
Absolutely. Cafe latte. So Mayesh and I did a project together a couple years ago where we took the cafe latte rose, which is sort of this crazy beigey mauve, right? It's this super funky color. And we built this color guide together and they made several different designs highlighting what this flower looked like with red, what it looked like with purples, what it looked like with browns. And so this guide is totally free. You can tell people where to go get it. But this is a great example of focusing on one flower that's challenging to work with. It's a tricky color, and I think sometimes it muddies a palette really, really fast. And so we sort of showcase, bringing in different saturations and really focusing on that. And it's really common with Mocha Mousse too, is that it can really bring down a palette. It's so tonal that it can really bring down the saturation. And so you want to be careful that it doesn't get too gray and kind of gray everything out. Unless that's what you want, things can start to look a little dead. So making sure that you've got some bright pops, if that's what you're going for, something that has a slightly higher saturation can help kind of lift and liven it. It's like adding citrus at the end of a dish. It adds brightness to a dish when you're cooking. Bright flowers do the same for palettes that feel more muddy. So pay attention to those more saturated tones and bringing them in.
I love it.
Cool.
Yeah, so I put the link for the Cafe Latte Rose Guide in the comments. All you all watching on Instagram, you're just going to have to go to our education page on mayesh.com and yeah, you can get it there. So mayesh.com, go to education. We have all of our guides there, including the Cafe Latte Guide. And it's all about color. So very cool. All right, so we probably have a lot of florists watching who work with brides. So how do you see Mocha Mousse playing into 2025's wedding season? Any predictions with color combinations that will be popular? I almost said 2024. Like I am not in 2025 apparently in my
It's
brain.
been a rough start to 2025. I think we've all seen some rough things. So again, trends are going to vary, right? Pantone releases this color, and it's kind of like awesome. We see it in furniture, we see it in electronics, we see it in kitchenwares. The floral industry sometimes is a couple years behind, right? So I would not panic. I would not be forcing this down people's throats. I would not be, we've got to do this. Oh no, Mocha Mousse, we got to bring in all this stuff. I would be paying really close attention to what is happening on Instagram and TikTok. Like this is where trends are set. And this is where brides are planning their wedding from their bed, scrolling on their phone like the rest of us. So paying attention to what you're seeing trending, I think, is the number one cue to be taking, not different wed guides or blogs. I mean, all those have their own, ideas. I have my own ideas, but the number one thing you can do is to pay attention to what's happening in your area and to try to be a little bit ahead of it, right? To be the designer who's paying attention to these trends and building content around the trends. We have to build it before they come. We can't just expect brides to show up and say, I have a perfect example of what I want. So a lot of times, maybe create a Mocha Mousse mood board and start sharing mood boards. If you don't have a lot of money, build these things on Canva of what your dream wedding would be and start sharing these on social and calling them a fun celebrity name or calling them a Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, mocha drink, whatever, right? Whatever's cool, whatever's trending, we want to jump on that and start using that in our marketing if that makes sense for your brand. One of the other things I think that I'm seeing though is, and I think a lot of us are seeing, is just really luxe details, lots of fabric, lots of femininity, lots of fruit styling, lots of fruit towers, lots of weird asymmetry, funky, cool, very sculptural. Where does color play into that? I think it's a lot of it is going to be in the incidentals. It's going to be in the linens, the tables, the candles, the fabrics, the pears on the table, anything that has that gorgeous color that can be incorporated along with yellow flowers, pink flowers, red flowers. So I don't see Mocha Mousse influencing the floral industry as heavily in floral. I think it's going to be on the peripheral. I could be wrong, but I just see, we've been doing brown flowers for a while, and it totally depends on the market. Like you said, your neighborhood moms are like, yes. And there's some flower shops that cannot sell even a nude colored carnation. People are like, this is dead, take it out, I don't want it. So it's going to vary a lot on your area, but I think we're just going to see a lot of it on the surrounding parts. Now, I will say, brown and blue is back. Now, I've been a florist, I don't know, 23 years now. I'm aging myself, but brown and blue was huge when I was a young florist. I'm sure you remember, Yvonne.
Yeah.
It was huge. I mean, the amount of brown and blue weddings, oh my gosh. So I'm seeing it come back. I don't know if you've seen it in fashion. I'm seeing it back in linens. I'm seeing it back. So it is back. It's a classic pairing. It's very elegant. I have like brown and blue trauma of like it being done really hokey and bad, and like hoping that doesn't make its way back, but it could. So really can be done really sophisticated in a really sophisticated way. But I think it's all about the brown linens and brown beautiful Mocha Mousse coloring and details with lots of gorgeous blue delphinium and blue nigella and blue tweedia and things like that. So that's where I'm hoping to see it kind of, and maybe brown lisianthus, but not every brown works in flowers. It just doesn't. So we have to be careful about what we're incorporating. Lighter is better. I think the darker brown we get, you start getting really visually heavy and it can really look dead. So sticking with lighter browns is, I think, the key.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, so let's say you have a client and you're trying to kind of explain color to them. They might be resistant to trying something different, or maybe just an elevated version of their idea, right? Like you're trying to get them to a place. How do you explain it to a client that they can understand?
Yeah, I love this question. So I'm big on, I feel really passionate about not asserting what we want necessarily. There's this really delicate balance with our customers, right? Of honoring and respecting what they want and also guiding and leading them as professionals. And this is a skill. I don't think we all do this really well naturally. We also all don't always have the time to flesh these conversations out. So I'm going to start answering this by saying, trust is the answer to all client frustration most of the time. I know there's difficult clients. We can be difficult clients, right? We're not all perfect, and our floral clients are the problem. So honoring and respecting our customers' wishes is important. But trust is really the crux of this for me. So trust is built not at the table when you're talking to somebody about color. Trust is built long before that, at the initial step of them engaging with your business. Trust is built in your brand. It's built in looking at a really beautifully curated portfolio. You want a customer to walk into your shop or studio or get on the phone with you already trusting your sensibility, your taste level, what kind of aesthetic you are going to bring to the table. This is already going to curb some of those challenging conversations and this kind of power struggle of back and forth. This goes across many parts of the business, pricing, logistics, all of it. But when it comes to design, the reality is we are the experts in the conversation 90% of the time. Sometimes we have a really talented customer who happens to be an interior designer, or maybe they're a beautiful artist, and maybe they know a lot. And that's a wonderful, exciting conversation. Most of the time, we are the expert, and we need to demonstrate our expertise through our education. And I'm just going to say this here. It's not a pitch for my course. If you pick up a book, if you read a blog post, if you do anything this year, invest in yourself as an artist, as a designer, as a business owner, in one small way. Chip away at one thing that you struggle with, whether it's the business side or the design side. But building trust, getting client buy-in is proving to them that you know what you're talking about. And so from the beginning, from the brand, from the process of intaking them into your business, that whole client process intake, all of those steps build trust so that when you sit down and you show up intelligent about talking about color, using the language like saturation, this pop of intensity is going to bring this up. It's going to lift this color story. If we have a lot of this, it's going to really bring it here. If we do this, it's going to complement this beautifully and add that really nice vibrancy and intensity that you're looking for. So we can use our education not as a way to bully clients and beat them down and say, you're dumb and I'm smart and I know everything and you don't know anything, is to start with curiosity and asking questions. First, people want to feel heard. They want to feel validated. They feel nervous and comfortable. They feel like they don't know anything. Oh, I don't know anything about flowers. I mean, I hear this all the time in client. Oh, I don't know anything. It's like, you actually know a lot. You're an expert on your taste and preference. That's what they're experts in. It's my job to understand that, interpret that, and then guide them in a floral process that meets that need. And so it's important that I listen first and I'm curious, how do they dress? What is their home like? Do they lean towards bright colors? Do they love tonal, neutral colors? Like, everything in my house is grayish. It's either beige or gray or like light tan. I don't wear bright pink. Like, I don't own a single piece of bright pink clothes. I wouldn't necessarily want that for my wedding, right? So understanding what your clients' tastes are helps us open the conversation to making small nudges. We never want to coerce someone. They will resent us. They will feel like they weren't heard. And so shoving things down our clients' throats, telling them we know what's best, I don't think is a successful way to build a powerful relationship with someone. I think understanding what they want and then having the expertise to match that aesthetically is what makes those successful relationships, especially in the wedding industry.
I love it. Thanks, Amy.
My pleasure.
So I know everyone's been waiting
Hey,
on pins and needles. I know they have. We brought up that you had exciting news to share,
exciting.
and we're waiting to the end to share it. So
Awesome. Love
yeah,
it.
let's hear it. Let's hear
Okay.
that for everyone.
Yes. So I have a special offer for our attendees today. We have a special code. I'm just pulling up the course here. So my course, Color Theory Confidence, is a extremely robust version. If I've piqued your interest in what I'm talking about, this is a really broken out into very structured way to break down how to learn how to master color. So what this course teaches is allowing you to have confidence, which is why we call it Color Theory Confidence, to actually speak about color and use this information to actually build more successful palettes. how do you talk about color in an intelligent way? How do you use color terminology? How do you use a color wheel? How do you explore and build better names for recipes? How do you write an incredible, like our previous florist wrote, how do you write about color in a way that's successful in your proposals, on your website? The course has a really robust color case study of core colors that we use, like peaches and raspberries and even taupes. And there's a taupe study in there. And so, how do you actually use trending colors in a successful way? There's a greenery color guide. So, a breakout visually of how to use greenery more strategically. If you follow some of your favorite designers, pay attention to the way they use greenery. They're not just throwing in whatever greens, they're paying very close attention to the color of the greenery that they use. So I have a breakout of all my favorites with photos and examples and names of exactly the type of greenery that you can use to enhance your color palettes that you're making. What are the color harmonies? There's 12 core color harmonies. You can simply follow the recipe of a color harmony to create success. So pick a harmony, pay attention to the proportion, blend those two together, boom, you've got a more successful color story that you're making. I also really get into the principles of design, application of design. So I show examples of my work and break out the proportions, break out the placements with arrows and signs and saying, this is exactly why this was a success. This wasn't as much of a success. Do you see why? This is what I would have changed about this. So there's a lot of tons. The course is gorgeous. It's full of beautiful images and video lessons, and it's just packed full of what you need to be more successful at color. And then one of my most favorite sections is a 1-hour module called My Color Palette Creation Process. That's a mouthful, but that's what I just talked about earlier in the call is what is that palette creation process? What are those 3 steps? You start with core hue, you start with a core concept, you start with a established harmony. Those are the 3 areas we can focus on. So how do you actually do that? And how much of everything do you put in that? And then applying color theory to designs. So I break this all down. The course is about 6.5 hours long. We have a link for you to go check it out. We have a completely risk-free offer of 14-day refund policy. So if it's not a good fit, you just email us. We give you all your money back. But we really want to help florists be more successful in their color palettes because we know how it can elevate somebody's work, especially in a competitive market. And so we've gotten some incredible reviews. I literally was at a wholesaler here in Virginia, I don't know, several months ago, picking up something, and this designer walked up to me and she said, "Are you Amy?" And I said, "Yeah, yes. Do I know? I'm sorry, I don't know you." She's like, "No, I bought your color course." And I can't tell you how it's totally changed my business and how I'm building palettes. And she was showing me what she was buying. And we had this amazing little
Oh, I love it.
impromptu color chat. It just like warmed
Yeah.
my heart. So she just happened to be like a local Maryland, based designer, and I got to meet her and talk about her color story. So the course is really meant to move the needle, and it's not a lot of fluff. It's not a lot of random. It's really condensed into what you need to know to be more successful. And we are going to give $100 off to all the Mayesh customers. And the course is already super low price. I think it's $297, and it's $100 off for all of you attending. And so we're going to give you this special discount, limited time. We've got a code for you to get started for $197 to jump in. You get the course for a lifetime. It's all online. You just set up a quick account and you can start watching right away. So hopefully, and yeah, Mayesh Color is the code, and it will pop that $100 off for you. And you can jump in and start building some successful palettes. And let me know. I always want to hear how it's going. Send me DMs, send me pictures of what you're making. I'm always so thrilled to hear from designers who are using this content and it's helping them. We just love to hear that feedback.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Amy. And just, obviously, not just because you're here, you've been a Mayesh Design Star. We did a workshop tour with you. You are an amazing educator and provide the way you speak about things too, it's very logical, very thoughtful, very, just with purpose. So, like you mentioned the word fluff, and that isn't anything that is not in your realm of the world. So, if you guys are looking for something, I put the link directly for the Color Theory Confidence, like if you just want to go there and that's it. But I definitely would encourage you to go to thefloralcoach.com. You can see the other education opportunities that Amy offers, and you can check that out as well. And then, of course, if you want to connect with Amy on Instagram, I pop that in the comments. For all of you guys that might be listening later or watching the replay, I will put the links on our blog as well, so that way you can get to all of that and have that blog link for you guys. So check it all out. It's all amazing. Save $100. Who doesn't want to save money and learn something all at the same time? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I love it. So thank you, Amy, so much for coming and chatting with us for a little less than an hour today. I so appreciate your time, and I miss you so much.
No, I miss you. I'm sending you a virtual hug.
Yes,
And thank you to
lots of
everyone
hugs,
joining
lots of
today.
hugs.
Lots of hugs. And also, real quick before we go, we've put together a really beautiful Valentine's Day color guide. It hasn't launched yet. We're launching it this next week. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'm going to be posting it. It's totally free. You'll just comment the word that we come up with on through ManyChat, and then you can get that free. And it's like 7 or 8 beautiful recipes we've curated with lots of interesting color stories for Valentine. So check that out as well. We do a lot of fun color blogs, and we write about color a lot. Florist Review just did a 3-page spread of an article that we wrote about color theory. So there's lots of good free resources out there as well for you guys to jump in.
I love it. Make sure you send that over to my team once it's live, because we would love to share that. So I love it. Thank you so much, Amy. Again, you are amazing. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And what an amazing conversation we had with Amy today, right? I don't know about you, but I'm feeling just really inspired to play around with Mocha Mousse and other colors in new ways. I hope you feel the same way. And again, Amy, thank you so much for sharing your incredible color theory knowledge with us, and for all these practical tips for our community.
Awesome. Hopefully you all have a very successful Valentine's. Let's go do it.
Let's go do it. I know. Have an amazing Valentine's Day, you guys. I want to hear from you. You know, I know it's on a Friday, so it gets a little scary, but you know, I hope that it is super successful for you guys. And for everyone that is watching, don't forget you can catch the replay or share it if you would like with your flower friends of this episode and all our other Mornings with Mayesh episodes. It's always up on our blog. We're always on Facebook and YouTube. It'll be reposted on Instagram shortly. And obviously we have our podcast, because we know that you can't always just sit and watch a video. So you can listen to us while you're doing all of the amazing things that you do in your life. And again, be sure that you follow Amy. I have the handle there. And stay tuned for the next show. Until then, keep on creating beautiful things. And remember, we're always here to help you grow. Thanks for spending your morning/afternoon with us, flower friends. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.